Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Las Vegas. It's wonderful to be together both in person and virtual. My name is Kem Tetlow, and I'm your worship associate for today. Our worship leader is Hilary Howarth. We both use she, her pronouns. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, whatever you believe about life's journey, you are welcome here. We broadcast a virtual feed for our video feed for our virtual attendees. If you wish not to be recorded, please sit towards the back of the or the sides of the sanctuary, because the middle of the thing is where they do the recording. Today of our hearts, we're going to express our sorrows and joys through the pebble and ritual water ritual familiar to many UUs. We will still read the names of anyone written in the book or in the chat. During of our hearts, you can also participate in the ritual if you'd like. We're going to end our service today with announcements. And after the service, we hope you'll join us for our coffee hour over in the social hall. If you're new here, you're our guest. This is the first Sunday, so you might have lunch with the first Sunday lunch month, and there'll be an announcement after that, after the service. Having your chosen name and pronouns visible during the service is an act of loving kindness. When we come together, we get to practice creating inclusive, worshipful spaces together. Please silence your rectangular cell phones and refrain from using the chat on Zoom. Please allow yourself to move in ways that your body needs. It's okay if you have to wiggle or stand up or sleep or even fidget a little bit. All bodies are welcome here. Welcome to our service. The Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Las Vegas is situated on the traditional homelands of the Nuuvi, Southern Paiute people. We are grateful for the land itself, for those who have stewarded it for generations, and for the opportunity to work, worship, learn, grow, and be in community with the land and with its peoples. We encourage everyone present to engage in continued learning about the indigenous peoples who work and live on this land since time immemorial. And as you're traveling, if you'd like to visit some of the Native American places and spaces, it would be useful to you to do that, to keep on learning too.
Today, we'll explore lessons from our Transylvanian cousins, Unitarian cousins. Theirs is a story of hardship, determination, and success. I am reminded of our new chapter here at UUCLV, a chapter when our future is unknown, yet with resolve and resilience, we can build a strong and purposeful future. Now we will light our chalice. When we gather together, we light the chalice, a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. The chalice reminds us that we are connected to a much larger religious tradition that stretches out of the past, reaches around the world, and leans into our shared future. Now, please join with me. We light the chalice as a reminder that together, beacon in the desert, may its light lead love, deafness. Thank you.
Are we doing a hymn first? No, okay, sorry, the order of service I have is incorrect then. So I'm Erin Mara. I use she, her pronouns, and this reading is by the Reverend Eric Cherry and is entitled The T Word. I admit that I have an impulse to protect people who are new to Unitarian Universalism from the T word. I'll perform linguistic gymnastics to avoid uttering it. I'll refer to Western Romania, a former part of Hungary, Eastern Europe, Erdélyi, anything but the T word. I do this because of a fear that Americans and potential new UUs carry so much fictional baggage about the T word that they'll run away, either in fear or of laughter. If Transylvania conjures images of vampires and werewolves and fairy tales, try to set that aside as merely a Hollywood trope. There in 1568, religious freedom was declared by government and religious leaders. For 450 years, aside from a few short years of political influence, the Transylvanian Unitarian Church has suffered serious oppression. What is remarkable, the people hold on. As dangerous as being actively Unitarian has often been in Transylvania over centuries, people held on. Transylvanian Unitarians learned what it means to sacrifice for their faith. They know something we only grasp occasionally, that the existence of Unitarianism, a historic tradition we share, is worth suffering and dying for. In our culture, Unitarian Universalism people sometimes walk away from the church after they've decided they've gotten as much as they can from it. In Transylvania, the Unitarian Church would have faded long ago if people didn't ask, instead, what does the church need from me? What they have given that has sustained their church is spiritual commitment.
What does Dracula have to do with Unitarianism? When we think of Dracula, we think of Bram Stoker's Count Dracula of Transylvania. That's why that minister doesn't like to use the T word. Bram Stoker based his novel on a historical character named Vlad Tepes, also known as Dracula. Vlad Tepes was a military leader and prince of Wallachia, which is a province of Romania, south of the Carpathians. Now, a quick word about geography. I know you all love that. Where is Transylvania? Well, I'm here to tell you it is a real place. Transylvania has been home to Unitarianism since the 16th century. 80,000 Unitarians still live there, and the area supports about 125 Unitarian churches. Transylvania Unitarians are ethnically and linguistically Székelys. Therefore, we had a hymn this morning, ode to the Székelys. That is to say, Hungarian. And the area has been historically both Romanian and Hungarian control. They have been discriminated against as an ethnic and religious minority over the years. A century after Dracula's death, Unitarianism came to Transylvania. Unitarian preacher, theologian, and martyr Francis David converted many to his theology of religious tolerance, including our only Unitarian king, John Sigismund Zapolia. Eg az Isten. Transylvania Unitarians have evolved as well, yet their belief in one God has remained constant. Ege az Isten, translated into English, means one, God is one. We have an opening hymn, We Would Be One, number 318 in the gray hymnal. And as we don't have a person to lead us in song, okay, Maggie's going to come up and save my bacon. But we will.
So this reading comes from the fall 2010 edition of the UU World magazine. The partner church movement began in 1990 when UUA President William F. Schultz led a delegation to Romania. It was Schultz's intent to confront Ceausescu's regime about a plan to destroy thousands of Romanian villages. A month before Schultz and his party left for Romania, however, Ceausescu was overthrown and executed. The trip went on as planned, And at its conclusion, the bishop of the Transylvanian Unitarians encouraged Schultz to form a sister church movement, connecting Transylvanian Unitarian churches with the North American UU congregations. Reverend David Guerrero, counselor to the bishop of the Transylvania Unitarian Church, said it was the movement through which our first contacts with the free world became possible. Transylvanian Unitarians were given the chance to become open to freedom of thought and spirit. To put it more poetically, our religion got wings.
This is of our hearts, and we're going to do a special ritual today. If you would come to the center aisle and move down, what we're going to do is we're going to pick up one of these stones in this bowl and put it in the water. The stones represents a lightness or a burden on your heart, and the water represents the love and strength of our community to surround, support, and celebrate you. We will also now ground ourselves in the present and honor the thread of humanity that connects all of us as living beings. As humans striving towards a beloved community, we have the privilege and responsibility to hold on and connect with each other as we live the sorrows and joys of life. Are you going to come and join us? Thank you.
My stone is a stone of sorrow for someone who has lost someone she loves, her child. Please send all meditations to her today. Thank you.
Thank you.
We also have the following names in our book: Quentin and Blake Tanguma, Dan Tossig, Andrea Evans, Bijou Bell and the Bell family. And Irma, are there any names in the chat?
Yes. Please think of Dave Veeder, Chris and Angel Johnston, Chiwaniso, Koirai, J.I.
Please keep all of those names spoken here and in the silence of your heart, and acknowledge the community that we all share today. Thank you. And now we're going to do the offering. We gather as a religious community to give each one of us a place where we can do the work of many. The offering supports the mission of the congregation to be a beacon of love and justice in the desert, and it also supports local organizations working to make our community a better place for all. The offering this month is going to be shared with a Unitarian church that is helping people from the Ukraine, and I don't remember the name of it. I'm sorry. Anyway, we share from the offering. Half of it goes to our church, and half of it goes to the church that is helping the Ukrainians. The link is also in the chat on Zoom, and the ushers are now going to pass the plates. Please join me with this reading. With gratitude for the abundance in our own lives, we give for this life of this congregation and for the benefit of the larger community. Now, microphone that's on.
It's good to see all of you here today. And I see a number of new faces, and I'm thrilled about that. And I see some longtime friends who have come to join us this week or this Sunday. 30 years ago, in 1992, the University of Washington received a USAID grant to provide business education and training in the United States. Excuse me, in Romania. I was the staff member who was asked to go to Bucharest for 6 weeks to coordinate faculty visits. Besides my actual work for the university, I had 2 other missions. First, my Seattle UU church asked me to visit our partner church in Alsó-Rakos, Transylvania. Our minister had sent letters of friendship, yet had received nothing in return. The second request came from a member of our church who had adopted Violeta from Romania. She and her husband had spent a month the previous year working on papers to adopt Violeta. After the month, their paperwork had not been accepted. So they asked a friend of theirs, Anna, to complete the paperwork. It took 6 months and many bribes, even to the mother of the child, for the adoption to go forward. I was given a package to give to Anna. I assumed it was cash. At that time in Romania, the banks and postal service could not be trusted. The only way to send money was with a trustworthy friend. My Seattle church went into high gear when it was learned that I'd be visiting our partner church. The mother of Violeta was a quilter, so we decided to piece together a banner as a friendship gift. My first image of Romania came from the plane's window. When we were landing in Bucharest, and on the way into town from the airport, I saw many things, many disturbing things. From the airplane's window, I could see packs of wild dogs running up and down the grassy area between the 2 runways. And ruins and garbage line the road into Bucharest. But the most disturbing of all, I saw a multi-story building without its front wall. I was able to see into the inner rooms on all the levels. Because it was late February, the families huddled together around an open fire on each of the levels, and there were many children. A toddler could easily cross the room and fall to death. Ceausescu had no interest in old buildings. He tore down older neighborhoods in order to fulfill his dream of a modern communist city. He had already built Soviet-style ugly apartment buildings. He hadn't flattened all the older areas. I was invited to a professor's home for dinner. As I walked up the street, I saw a rusted bulldozer. 3 doors down was the professor's home, and I asked him about it. He said he and his neighbors had been given 1 week to leave their home, his grandparents' home. And luckily for them, Ceausescu died and the deconstruction halted. And before the entire neighborhood vanished. When I got to Romania, I had a preconceived notion that all the women were married early and had a dozen children. That was true amongst the undereducated people. In fact, the government paid a handsome sum for each new child. The result was that parents couldn't feed or clothe their additional children, so they were warehoused in secret facilities. When the world found out about these so-called orphanages, so did the Romanian people. It was a shock. Anna, the adoption helper, surprised me. She was 38 years old, unmarried, just like me. She worked for the telephone company. Her English was rudimentary, only enough English to connect people, but not to overhear conversations. On our second meeting, Anna decided to invite her friend along who spoke better English and had a car. That's how I met George, my future husband. It's a great story for another time. Finding our partner church wasn't easy. I took the train to Brașov, which was the closest Transylvanian city. Speaking no Romanian, nor any Hungarian, that made it more difficult. So I went into the Lutheran church at the Saxon Lutheran church in the city square. And I looked around and I approached the woman who was selling postcards. And I went up to her and I smiled and said, Unitarian. And eventually she looked bright and happy and she said, Unitariusk. And I nodded. She looked up the address in a 1930s telephone book, published 60 years before. I can tell you that information under communism is power in a communist country. Hence, people couldn't get maps or phone books or any other useful information. She found the address and I set off. Eventually, I found the address of the Unitarian Church of Brașov. They asked me to return in 2 weeks, by which time they would arrange transportation to Alsó-Rakos, the town of our partner church. I brought an interpreter with me when I returned. We stayed overnight at the Brașov church. Brașov was building a second Unitarian church in the city just before World War II, but under communism, that church was never built. One building served 2 different congregations. Our visit to the Brașov church was mixed with joy and sorrow. I was shocked to see a black eye on the minister number 1 at breakfast, on the wife of the minister number 1 at breakfast. The communist regime shut down everything but Sunday services. We witnessed new signs of freedom. Quickly, Sunday schools were revived. 40 years before, the Brașov church had a women's choir. Women in their 70s and 80s from the original choir started it up again. With delight, we had attended a newly formed Friday night program for teenagers with a very vivacious woman. Beside her was Brașov's number 2 minister, drunk. At 9 a.m. that Saturday, Reverend Egid, the minister from Alsó-Rakos, picked us up. No bad habits that I could see, only deep sorrow, carrying the burden of his congregation's troubles on his shoulders. The Unitarian Church in Aldas was founded just 5 years after Francis David started preaching Unitarianism. On Sunday morning, best clothes were pressed with an iron heated by coal. That was done in the kitchen, and then we all assembled and walked down the street together to the Lich Gate. Here we center ourselves for worship when lighting our chalice. In Aldas, people center themselves when they walk up the hill to church. The church was well attended that Sunday. Everyone wanted to see the millionaire who came from America to their village. Reverend Egid invited me to present the gifts from Seattle and say a few words. I was so grateful for my interpreter. I stood up and took a deep breath, a moment that allowed me to survey the crammed pews, women and children on one side, men on the other. These people were farmers or quarry workers. Their weather-beaten faces showed that they had worked their entire lives outside. The women also looked worn down. Their lot wasn't easy. They cared for the animals, hauled water from the central spigot, and baked bread in an outdoor oven. Then I started. I represent the American Unitarians that live in Seattle, Washington, who have chosen to partner with your church. You might wonder why you weren't with us, why we weren't with you for the past 40 years. Because the government would have seen it as interfering with internal affairs, and there would have been reprisals against you. Everyone was nodding. I represent a new era. My Seattle church wants to partner with your church. We'd like to understand your greatest needs and help. Toward that end, I have 2 gifts for your church. Reverend Egid unwrapped the banner, giving me time to look at the congregation. I saw tears streaming down faces, even the toughest looking men. Next came the trickiest part, the financial gift. Why was it difficult? Because suspicion and rumors of malfeasance were levied at everyone in Romania at that time. The minister was not exempt. So I openly presented a gift of $200 to Reverend Egid and the president of the congregation. Reverend Egid fanned out the 10 $20 bills so everyone could see. I heard a gasp. $200 represented 4 months' salary in Romania. I have never had a moment like that in my life, even to this day. It felt like a spirit had moved through me as I stood before the Unitarians of Aldas. Communications lines were now open after my visit. When I returned to Seattle, I met with our minister, Peter Rabel. As I began to report on my trip to Transylvania, I started weeping, then sobbing and sobbing and sobbing, finally releasing all the misery I witnessed while away. Eventually, I was able to tell him about my experiences. My Seattle church went into fundraising mode immediately. Our goal was to raise $5,000 to buy a tractor for Aldas. We succeeded. The tractor was shared among all the farmers in the region, Unitarian or not. A driver was hired by the Unitarians. It was a package deal. Rent the tractor, receive a qualified tractor driver. In addition, to raise awareness about Unitarianism in Transylvania and to bolster relationships with our partner church in Transylvania, I organized a trip to Romania, something very difficult to do at that time. 28 members of our Seattle church participated. After we raised money for the tractor, we invited Reverend Egid and his daughter Zenda to Seattle. With the visit, the rest of the Seattle congregation better understood our partner church relationship. It was a privilege for George and me to host them. We have remained lifelong friends. I'd like to share another story of a partnership relationship. This one was with Oakland, California, who partnered with a similarly named Unitarian village, Auckland, and created a nonprofit organization called Project Hope. Here are the words of Barbara Schmyrna, who is there. She's from Oakland. Quote, "With Project Hope, we agreed to raise funds to purchase a barn, develop a flour mill, along with a bread bakery. This would enable the village to control the making of their daily loaf of bread, the most significant part of each Eastern European meal, even today." She says, "I remember sitting at the minister's kitchen table with a group of farmers in the village. They were discussing how and from where they would gather the grain that would be ground in their own flour mill and then baked into bread in their very own bakery. Before our mill was built, the farmers needed to drive their ox carts to the closest town, some kilometers away, and wait in line for the government mill to grind the flour. That process took an entire day. As we talked around the kitchen table that evening, I could see in the villagers' eyes that they were just beginning to grasp what it could mean that they, the village farmers themselves, could control this basic means of production of the most basic food product in their diets. That memory continues to inspire me over these years. It was the beginning of the growth of hope. Project Hope evolved. After 10 years, they began a new partnership that provides community-driven grants. Project Hope started with a nut of $40,000 in order to provide grants for Unitarian community development. Rather than starting new programs themselves, this new phase of Project Hope believes that the communities are best served by home brewed initiatives. Now, from my point, our Transylvanian Unitarian cousins started in poverty and through their own hard work now have gained financial stability. Now let's consider our situation. We have a golden opportunity for us now. With the departure of Reverend Gordon, the board has decided to wait before hiring a new minister. Instead, Nina Kuziak and Mark Bergthal will each provide a service. For the third Sunday, we'll bring in different UU ministers from around the region. Lastly, once a month, we'll have a lay leader. In order to improve the quality of our lay speakers and services, we're starting a training program to improve the quality of our service, volunteer services. So if you're interested in having something to say up here, please take the course that's being offered. As I have said before, our congregation is not our minister. It is all of us, all of you. If you aren't asking what UUCLV can do for you, but would rather see a Unitarian Universalist congregation in this valley for years to come, step forward. Now is the time. We need you with whatever time, talent, or treasure you can offer.
This is a reading called Our Place in the Cosmos by Reverend Erica Hewitt, who is from Portland, Maine. She starts with a quote from Carl Sagan. "The cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff." We humans have always looked up at the stars, wondered about them, told stories about them. During the many thousands of years that human beings have been looking up at the stars, we've changed our understanding of what the universe looks like and how it works. More than 500 years ago, Nicholas Copernicus was born in Poland. He watched the stars and planets and used his observations to come up with a pretty unique and pretty upsetting idea. In his day, most people thought that the Earth was at the center of the universe. They also thought the stars were little holes in a glass ball surrounding the Earth. Copernicus thought, what if the universe doesn't move around the Earth? What if the Earth is actually a planet circling the sun? Copernicus wrote a book about this idea, which wasn't popular. Today, we know that Copernicus was right. Our planet Earth circles the sun, which is a star. It took a long, long time, hundreds of years, for people to finally believe this and to stop saying that the Earth is the center of the universe. Copernicus said, I don't think the heavens revolve around the Earth. He was speaking as a scientist, but the church heard it as challenging their religion, a heresy. This upsetting story of Copernicus intersects with the story of our Unitarian ancestors. Not very far away from where Copernicus watched the planets and stars is where some of the first Unitarians built their churches and formed their faith right about the same time that Copernicus wrote his book about the Earth revolving around the sun. Our Unitarian ancestors knew what it was like to say and believe things that could get them in trouble. One of those things was Eg Ash Ishtan, God is one. When they and we say God is one, we're saying we don't agree with the Christian Trinitarian doctrine that Jesus was not incarnate. We're saying that Jesus was fully human. A lot of Unitarians in Transylvania and elsewhere died because they wouldn't stop believing or saying that God is one. Eg Ash Ishtan.
This is the, oh, let's go back. This is the church, or what you just saw was the church in the same town as the one that had Project Hope. And on their ceiling, they have painted a painted ceiling, and one of those painted squares is the solar system that Copernicus talked about. And we, as a religious organization, have been welcoming scientific ideas when they aren't popular. And for that, I am proud of this organization. Call to action. Please consider your relationship to UUCLV. What do you want for our future? It's up to us, all of us. Why not consider volunteering? We have lots and lots of opportunities, big and small. Next, invite a friend to church. The reading, I have a benediction now, and this reading has been adapted for UUCLV. It's written by Margaret Weiss, and she calls this piece, "The Church Has Left the Building." UUCLV is not a place, it is a people. Our congregation is not walls, but rather person, linked to person, linked to person. A community built on the foundation of reason, faith, and love. This building is not just a set of doors open on Sunday, but the commitment day after day and moment after moment of our hearts. The church is not simply a building or pew. The church is a gathering together of all the people and experiences and fear and love and hope in our resilient world. And hope in our resilient hearts. Gathering however we can to say to the world, welcome, come in, lay down your headache and pick up hope and love. For the church is us, each and every one of us together. A beacon of hope to this world that so sorely needs it.
And now, if you would join with me, we're going to extinguish our chalice. We release that which was called with love and gratitude, and we extinguish the flame, but not our commitment to being a beacon in the desert. This burns brightly until we gather again. And we have 3 announcements today. Jack and Bob, you want to?
Well, we'll tell you.
Sorry.
And point them out.
Okay.
We have a first Sunday lunch bunch every first Sunday, and that happens at noon. And if you want to know where, how to get there, you know the people to speak to. And next we have a message from our president of the congregation.
Good morning, everyone. Just very quickly, I'm sure you know we're having a congregation-wide meeting on the 19th. We had a congregation-wide meeting to call Reverend Gordon. Now it's time to say goodbye to him. I just want to let you know that meeting is going to be totally on Zoom, and he's actually going to be in the pulpit in Honolulu, which is why we're on Zoom. And so we need to move the time a little bit later. I had it scheduled for 10:30. That's a little early Hawaii time, so it's going to be noon. But I just want to make sure everybody knows that. I just found this out, so it didn't make it into the flash for this week, but it will be in the flash next week. Thanks.
The third announcement is that I have brought some things representing Transylvania Unitarians, and I'll put them on display up here. So if you want to learn a little bit more, you're welcome to do so. We have a postlude. Excuse me. It's called 3 Hungarian Folk Songs for Sick. And if Kay is willing to come up and just mention a few words about music from Transylvania, that would be lovely.
This is unexpected. Bartók, who wrote the Postlude, and Kodai, both famous composers, were cohorts, and they would go around Transylvania and the area that was Hungary, and just that general area, because countries weren't named the way they are now. They would collect folk tunes and then incorporate those into some of their own music. They were both prolific composers. Kodai developed a whole system of music instruction for kids to learn music quickly, using kind of like a solfege system and hand signals for do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. And they're very well accepted all over the world. And Kodai and Bartók both were Unitarians, which I'm pretty happy about. I think that's cool. I did a service a few years ago here all on Bartók, and I think we did a little bit on Kodai also. So that's something we can look forward to in the future. And you're going to hear the music by Bartók that was just mentioned for your postlude. So if you have other questions about Unitarian composers, there are plenty of them. Thank you.